An 8,000-person workforce, 20 million hours logged, one flagship site in the middle of nowhere, Texas, racing to build the largest AI data center campus the world has ever seen. And behind that number, workers with broken femurs, workers found dead in a portable toilet, workers who say they were told cold water was a luxury. This is Stargate, the $500 billion project announced by the president, OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank. And by the end of this video, I'm going to show you what almost nobody is talking about. What's actually happening on the ground while the world watches the ribbon cuttings. Here's the thing. When Stargate was unveiled in the Roosevelt Room in January 2025, the pitch was speed. Beat China. Build faster than anyone in history. And Abilene, Texas delivered on that promise. An 100-acre mega campus that went from groundbreaking to energized buildings faster than almost any hyperscale project on record. But speed has a cost, and in Abilene, that cost is being measured in fractures, lawsuits, and NDAs. If you follow what's happening to Texas, subscribe, and drop your city in the comments. I like seeing where everybody's watching from. Let's break it down, starting with the man whose story kicked off the investigation that exposed all of this. Daniel Gonzalez is a 49-year-old truck driver with 25 years on the job, no injuries, ever, until March 14th of this year. He showed up at the Abilene site before dawn to drop off a concrete box of electrical parts. A digging machine was hammering nearby. Workers had no walkie-talkies. And as Gonzalez worked to unchain his delivery, another worker up on a ladder who couldn't hear him, couldn't see him, threw a chain down. It hit Gonzalez in the head, knocked his hard hat clean off, and knocked him out cold. He was diagnosed with a closed head injury. He's now suing two of the contractors on site, alleging the whole operation was, in his words, sloppy. And that's where this gets bigger. Gonzalez's accident isn't an isolated incident. It's one entry in a growing file. Federal OSHA reports reviewed by investigators show at least 3 separate leg fracture incidents in 2025 alone. One worker pinned underneath an excavator, one crushed by 1,400 pounds of falling glass panels, one knocked off a ladder when a jack slipped, breaking 2 bones in his leg. In that glass panel case, a project manager actually wrote to OSHA that employees were rushing to finish the job, rushing, on a $500 billion project. So what happens when you cross-reference that with emergency response data? Call logs from the county sheriff's office show 911 was dialed from the first Abilene site 14 separate times since December 2024. A foot run over by a machine, a neck injury from a falling object, possible heat stroke, and an employee in his mid-20s who suffered what looks like a heart attack on site. But here's the catch, and this is the part that should stop you. On October 1st of last year, a 61-year-old worker named Andre Guthrie was found dead inside an on-site portable toilet at the Stargate campus. Police notes describe him as cold, bleeding from the nose, no color. The company that runs the site says medical professionals determined his death was unrelated to workplace conditions. The police department says it can't confirm or deny that. The investigation as of this reporting was still open. That's not a headline you'd expect to find buried under a story about artificial intelligence. Would you say projects like this are moving too fast to keep their own workers safe? Or is this just what building at this scale always looks like? Now let's talk about why almost none of this reached the public before now. 2 words: non-disclosure agreements. Electricians who spoke to investigators did so anonymously because they'd signed NDAs, standard practice technically in construction and in competitive tech projects. But multiple workers describe conditions that go beyond trade secrets: hand washing stations without water or soap, managers allegedly telling crews that cold drinking water was, quote, a luxury, not a right, during a Texas summer that regularly hits 110 degrees. Fans reportedly taken away from workers. One electrician says he pulled 60-hour weeks in that heat and had a panic attack on site. Between 2010 and 2021, at least 53 workers died from heat-related illness across the state of Texas. That's the baseline this project was operating inside of. And here's a detail that changes the shape of the whole story. One worker alleged the site employed undocumented labor, which he says created a culture of fear where people were too scared to report anything at all. If that's true, then the silence isn't an accident, it's the business model. So what does the company actually say about all this? Oracle told investigators the site was, in their words, far safer than most and claimed an incident rate 2.5 times lower than industry norms, citing federal labor statistics. Sounds reassuring. But when asked to actually hand over the internal data behind that claim, Oracle declined. And here's the wrinkle almost nobody mentions. The federal injury data companies are compared against is self-reported by employers. A government audit found both employers and workers are quietly disincentivized from logging every injury, and one peer-reviewed study estimated official logs miss somewhere between a third and nearly 70% of real workplace injuries and illnesses. So a statistic built on self-reported numbers, compared against other self-reported numbers, isn't proof of safety. It's an average of two systems with no outside referee. And that's where the enforcement side of the story gets even stranger. When OSHA investigated the excavator incident that fractured a worker's pelvis and both femurs, it fined the contractor a little over $5,000 for failing to train workers properly. The contractor fought it, and OSHA withdrew the citation entirely in a settlement. A former OSHA policy advisor who reviewed the file called it highly unusual for the agency to erase a citation once a settlement has already confirmed the hazard existed. Her read, that sends contractors on dangerous job sites a signal that safety violations can come with a way out. Is your city sitting on a construction boom right now? And if it is, do you actually trust what's happening behind the fence? Now here's the part that ties the whole thing together. The reveal I promised you at the start. This isn't really a story about one bad contractor or one unlucky worker. It's a structural problem. Stargate's Abilene site is run by a web of contractors and subcontractors stacked on top of each other. General contractors, subcontractors, sub-subcontractors, and every layer in that stack dilutes who's actually responsible when something goes wrong. A labor advocate who tracks construction sites across Texas describes this kind of megaproject environment bluntly, calling it a wild, wild west where labor is the easiest place to cut costs once materials get expensive. And a union electrician from outside Texas put it even more directly, saying decades of fought for safety standards are being eroded by contractors, pushing workers who are too scared to push back. So here's the reading, the part that actually matters for you, watching this, wherever you are. Every time you read a headline about a new AI mega campus, the gigawatts, the billions, the Beat China urgency, there's a second story underneath it that almost never gets the same airtime. The people pouring concrete, hanging glass, wiring panels at speeds no one's ever attempted before, inside a legal structure built to make sure no single company is ever fully on the hook. And when the incentive is speed, corners get cut in exactly the place you'd expect, the one furthest from the cameras. Daniel Gonzalez says the safety protocols have actually improved since his injury. More staff, walkie-talkies now standard. That's a real improvement, but it took a head injury, a lawsuit, and a national investigation to get there. And Andre Guthrie's family is still waiting on an autopsy. This is what no one in history has built this fast actually costs on the ground in Abilene. Not the version in the press release, the version in the OSHA file. If this is the blueprint for the next decade of American infrastructure, the question worth asking isn't whether we can build faster. It's who we're willing to let get hurt to do it. If this kind of reporting matters to you, hit subscribe and drop a comment with what you think should change first. The contracts, the enforcement, or the pace. See you in the next one.